The day started like any other. The sun rose behind a veil of grey clouds, casting a dull light over the sleepy town of Grimsfield. But in the air, there was something wrong, a heaviness, like the sky itself was mourning something it knew would come. At the edge of town, a group of friends gathered at a rusted bus stop, laughing and teasing one another, blissfully unaware that fate had already written their names in blood. 17-year-old Lila Moran sat quietly, fiddling with her necklace, a small silver locket given to her by her grandmother, a woman long rumored to be a seer. Lila's pale blue eyes flicked up nervously every time a car passed, her heart quickening with each roar of the engine. She couldn't shake the dream from the night before. It had felt more like a vision, dark, grotesque flashes of mutilated bodies, metal twisted like vines, screams that pierced bone. The others didn't notice her fear. There was Ben, the jokester with a reckless streak, and his girlfriend Emily, who posted every second of her life on social media. Behind them stood Darren, quiet and brooding, and Kayla, who always seemed too excited about danger. Together, they were heading to an amusement park 3 towns over, to celebrate graduation. But Lila's skin crawled with every passing minute. As their bus arrived, screeching to a stop with a guttural hiss, Lila froze. Her vision slammed into her mind again like a tidal wave. She was back in the dream. The bus speeding down a wet highway, the driver's lifeless stare, the swerve, the crash, the screams, burning bodies, broken glass, blood pooling like ink. She gasped and lurched back, her body trembling. "What the hell, Lila?" Ben laughed nervously. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "We can't get on that bus," she whispered, eyes wide. "Something terrible is going to happen." The others stared. Kayla rolled her eyes. "Seriously? Are you pulling a prank?" "No. I'm not kidding," Lila stammered. "I saw it. A crash. Everyone dead. We die on that bus." Darren frowned. "You mean, like a premonition?" Ben scoffed, but his grin wavered. "That's ridiculous." But something in Lila's eyes, the sheer terror, stopped him from stepping forward. The bus driver, an old man with sunken eyes and an unsettling grin, looked over. "Y'all getting on?" he rasped. "No," Lila said sharply, backing away. "We're not." The group hesitated, then awkwardly followed her, murmuring complaints. The bus doors hissed shut, and the vehicle pulled away, vanishing around the bend. Minutes later, the air was split by a deafening explosion. A column of black smoke rose in the distance, a scream of twisted metal echoing from the hills. Lila collapsed to her knees as the others stared in horror. The bus had crashed, exactly as she saw. Flames licked the sky, and sirens began to wail. They were supposed to die. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. Her hands shook as she scrolled through news reports. Horrific bus crash kills 23. Pictures of burned wreckage filled the screen. Survivors listed, none. Ben called her a miracle. Emily cried and hugged her. But Darren said what no one wanted to admit. "If death wanted us, maybe it's not finished." Lila stared at the reflection in her locket's glass. Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, as if something watched her from within. The dream wasn't over. This was just the beginning. Because death doesn't like to be cheated. And it always comes to collect. 3 days had passed since the crash, and Grimsfield felt colder. The sun refused to pierce through the thick grey clouds, and the wind howled like a warning. The 5 survivors, Lila, Ben, Emily, Darren, and Kayla, tried to go back to their lives, but something had changed. Death wasn't done. It began with Kayla. Lila had begged them all to stay together, to talk about what happened, but Kayla had brushed it off. "I'm not going to live in fear," she snapped. "I don't care what kind of dream you had. We're alive. That's all that matters." She had gone home that night, her parents away on a business trip, leaving her alone in their modern but creaky 3-story house. The kind of silence that settles in a place like that feels unnatural, almost manufactured. But Kayla paid no mind. She poured herself a glass of wine, cranked up the music, and settled into the bathtub. Her phone lay nearby, buzzing occasionally with texts from Ben and Emily. Steam filled the air. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth soak into her skin. Then the temperature dropped. She sat up, frowning. The water felt off. Colder. The steam vanished before her eyes, like it had been vacuumed out of the room. A sharp noise echoed from the hallway, a creak. Followed by another. She held her breath. "Hello?" she called. "Is someone here?" No answer. She reached for her phone. It wasn't there. Frowning, she stood up, dripping wet, and stepped onto the slick tile floor. The lights flickered, then dimmed. A soft noise came from the drain, like whispering. She knelt closer. Suddenly, a jet of black water erupted, splashing her face. She screamed, stumbling back. The water kept rising, impossibly fast, sloshing over the edges of the tub like a living thing. Panicked, she turned to run, only to slip hard on the wet floor. Her head struck the corner of the sink with a sickening crunch. She didn't move. But death wasn't satisfied with just that. As if pulled by unseen strings, the hairdryer she had left near the sink buzzed to life. Its cord slowly slithered across the counter, dragging the device toward the pool of water spreading from Kayla's unconscious body. It paused, then dropped. The instant it touched the water, electricity surged, snapping and crackling like lightning. Kayla's body jolted once. Then it was still. The next morning, Lila got the call. "Kayla's dead," Darren's voice said coldly. "In her bathroom. Slipped, hit her head. They said it was an accident." But Lila knew better. Her hands trembled as she looked at the paper she had scrawled on the night after the crash. A list of the seats on the bus. Who sat where? The order they would have died in. Kayla had been first. "We're still on the list," Lila whispered. Ben laughed nervously when he heard the theory. "So what, death is hunting us one by one? That's insane." "No," Darren said flatly. "It's real. You didn't see the way Kayla's body looked. It wasn't just a fall." Emily's voice cracked. "So how do we stop it?" Lila looked out the window. A raven perched on the power line stared at her, its head tilted unnaturally. It let out a single shriek, then flew away into the mist. "We cheated death," she whispered. "Now we have to figure out how to stay alive. Or die, horribly." The group fell silent. Because somewhere, death was already setting its next trap. And it always knows when you're alone. Ben didn't believe it, not really. Even after Kayla's death, he clung to denial like a shield. He said it was a freak accident, bad luck, a slippery floor. But when Lila told him he was next, he laughed in her face. "Death isn't coming for me," he grinned. "I'm unkillable." He was wrong. That morning, Ben headed to the garage where he worked part-time, a greasy, rust-scented place owned by his Uncle Vince. The clatter of tools and the shriek of power drills filled the air as Ben strutted inside, twirling his keys and whistling a tune he couldn't quite remember. But even he felt something off. The lights flickered just a second too long when he entered. The clock on the wall spun backward before clicking back into place. The air tasted metallic. Ignoring it, Ben got to work. His assignment, a full brake system replacement on an old, battered pickup truck. Easy stuff. He slipped under the vehicle, tools in hand, music blaring from a nearby speaker. As he worked, his phone buzzed. A text from Lila. "Please be careful. It's going to happen today." "I know it." He rolled his eyes and tucked the phone away. But something had already begun. A small stream of motor oil dripped from the underside of the truck onto a frayed extension cord. It hissed faintly as it soaked into the wire. Nearby, a grinder sat plugged in, its switch nudged slightly from a fallen wrench. The tool vibrated, then spun to life. Ben didn't notice. He finished bolting the caliper and slid out from beneath the truck. That's when he heard it, the shriek of metal behind him. The grinder had flown from the table and was grinding into a hanging chain, sending sparks everywhere. One spark landed in the oil spill. Flames erupted instantly. "Shit!" Ben yelled, stumbling backward. The fire surged toward the gas tank of the truck. He ran to grab the extinguisher, but tripped over the air hose. As he hit the ground, his hand slammed a switch on the hydraulic lift. The truck above him groaned, then began to descend. Ben's eyes widened in horror as he rolled to escape, the vehicle lowering faster than normal, far faster. The extinguisher was just inches away. He grabbed it, turned, and saw the oil trail now racing toward a leaking propane tank at the back of the garage. No, no, no. He aimed the extinguisher and fired, but nothing came out. It was empty. The heat intensified. The chain above him snapped with a loud crack, sending a loose engine block from a nearby crane swinging like a pendulum. Time slowed. Ben tried to run, but the engine slammed into him, crushing him between the pickup and the wall with a sickening crunch. Bones shattered. Blood sprayed. The flames danced hungrily around his body as the propane tank hissed. Outside, the explosion shattered windows for blocks. Later that night, Lila stood outside the blackened garage, staring at the ruins. Emily sobbed beside her, and Darren stood in cold silence. "That's two," Darren said. "It's following the exact order." Emily trembled. "We have to stop this. There has to be a way." Lila turned slowly. "There is. We need to find the pattern. If we can see how it comes, maybe we can stay one step ahead." Darren narrowed his eyes. "Or maybe it's already too late." Above them, a power line sparked. A crow pecked at something in the road, Ben's melted phone, screen still flashing with Lila's unanswered message. Death had claimed another soul. And it wasn't slowing down. Emily hadn't slept in 2 days. Since Ben's death, a dread had wrapped itself around her mind like barbed wire. The horrifying photos in the newspaper, the footage of the explosion on the news, it haunted her. And Lila's voice still echoed in her head, "You're next." She tried to tell herself it wasn't real. That it was just survivor's guilt. That the order Lila insisted on, based on some imagined seating plan, was coincidence. But Emily had felt something that morning, a heaviness in her chest. Like something was watching. She stayed home from school. Her parents had left on a business trip that morning, and her little brother was at a sleepover. The house was silent. Unnaturally so. Every creak in the floorboard sent a jolt of panic through her. Emily sat curled on the couch, staring at the list Lila had made. Her name, third. After Kayla. After Ben. The next. Thunder rumbled outside as rain began to pour, tapping against the windows in a cold, uneven rhythm. She rose to shut them, her hands trembling. That's when she noticed the photo frames on the wall, family pictures, had tilted. Every single one. As though someone had brushed past them, ever so gently. Emily backed away. The TV across the room flickered on by itself. Static. Then a black screen. Then, without warning, it showed footage of the bus crash. The fiery wreckage. The twisted bodies. It wasn't real news footage, this was something else. The screen zoomed in slowly on a still-burning seat. Her seat. Emily screamed and yanked the cord from the wall. The screen went dark. Panicking now, she ran into the kitchen to grab her phone, but it was dead. Not just powered off. Dead. She dropped it, backing into the fridge. The humming of the appliance grew louder, until it suddenly stopped. The kitchen grew cold. The lights dimmed. The faucet behind her dripped once. Then again. Drip. 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 She turned, and the faucet blasted open, spraying water across the room. Slipping, Emily grabbed the counter, accidentally knocking a toaster into the wet sink. Electricity crackled nearby. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." She ran upstairs, breath ragged, her bare feet slapping the hardwood. Behind her, she swore she heard footsteps. Not hers. Slamming her bedroom door shut, she locked it and shoved her dresser in front of it. The room was dark now, the only light a small lamp by her bedside. Her laptop sat open. As she reached for it, the screen flickered to life, another video. It showed her sleeping. She stared in horror. The angle was from her own ceiling. As she watched, a tall, faceless shadow crept into the frame, leaning over her sleeping body. The timestamp was from last night. She spun around, staring at the ceiling. Nothing. But when she looked back, the video had changed. It now showed her standing at the laptop, watching the video. Behind her, in the reflection of the dark screen, a shape moved. The lamp exploded. Glass flew like shrapnel, one shard slicing into her throat before she could scream. She fell back, choking, blood pouring down her chest. Gasping, she reached for the door, but her legs refused to work. The bedroom light buzzed violently, then shattered. The room went black. The last thing Emily saw was her reflection in the window. A figure stood behind her, head cocked, arms stretched unnaturally wide. Then, nothing. Hours later, Lila sat in her car outside Emily's house, hands clenched around the steering wheel. Police lights flashed in the distance. "They found her," Darren said beside her, voice hollow. "It happened again." Lila shook her head. "We need answers. There has to be a way to stop it." Darren turned to her slowly. "Then we find the survivor who beat it before. If anyone knows how to cheat death, it's them." And far away, in a quiet nursing home, an old woman sat in a dark room, her walls covered in newspaper clippings of accidents and survivors. She felt it. Death was moving again. Rain drenched the windshield as Lila and Darren pulled up to the quiet, ivy-wrapped nursing home on the outskirts of town. The sign read St. Margaret's Long-Term Care Facility, but there was nothing saintly about the place. The air was heavy with mildew and decay, and the halls seemed too quiet, like the building itself was holding its breath. They asked for her by name, Clara Redmond. The receptionist blinked in surprise. "She doesn't get visitors," she said, voice low. "Not in decades. People say she's strange." "We're used to strange," Lila replied. The nurse led them to the end of the hallway. Room 217. The door creaked open slowly. Clara sat in a rocking chair facing the window. Her skin was thin and pale like parchment, her eyes dull and sunken. But when she spoke, her voice was sharp as broken glass. "You've seen it," she rasped, without turning. "It's back again, isn't it?" Lila nodded. "We survived a bus crash. People are dying. One by one. We think it's following the order we would have died in." Clara let out a dry laugh. "It always does." Darren stepped forward. "How did you survive?" Clara turned to face them. "I didn't." A chill ran down Lila's spine. Clara continued, "I escaped once. In 1986. A roller coaster collapse. I had a premonition. I pulled people off before it happened. But death doesn't forget. It waits. It watches. It comes when you think it's over." Darren asked, "So how did you beat it?" Clara leaned forward, her smile twisted. You don't beat it. But sometimes, you can trick it. Trick it? Lila echoed. She nodded. If someone dies out of order, death resets. It's obsessed with sequence. Patterns. Break the chain, and you buy time. But how do you know who's next? Darren asked. Clara's face darkened. You feel it. In the gut. You'll see signs. Shadows that move wrong. Broken reflections. Whispers. Always just out of reach. Suddenly, the overhead light flickered. Clara's rocking chair stopped moving. Do you feel that? She whispered. It's here. A loud crash echoed from down the hall. Lila rushed to the door. The hallway lights buzzed and dimmed. At the far end, a gurney rolled by itself, screeching as it slammed into a wall. An orderly screamed. Darren backed toward Clara, eyes wide. We need to go. Clara didn't move. No. I've felt it for weeks. It's finally come for me. The floor beneath her chair creaked ominously. Suddenly, the ceiling above split open. Water burst from a ruptured pipe, soaking the flickering light fixture directly above Clara. Sparks danced like fireflies. No. Lila cried, but it was too late. The fixture crashed down with a blinding flash, impaling Clara through the shoulder as electricity surged through her frail body. She convulsed once, then fell limp, her eyes staring blankly at the wall. A burned black handprint seared itself onto the floor beneath her. Darren stepped back, trembling. She was right. It wanted her. But that means... He turned to Lila, his face pale. You're next. Lila's breath caught in her throat. In the hallway mirror, her reflection was gone. Outside, lightning split the sky. The game was still on. Death had claimed a veteran. Now it was hunting the rest with renewed fury. Lila stared into the hallway mirror, her face absent from the glass. Darren grabbed her arm. Come on, we have to go. But she couldn't move. Her mind screamed one word over and over, next. 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 Clara's words rang in her head, you'll see signs. Broken reflections. Whispers. Shadows that move wrong. And now, her reflection was gone. She snapped out of it as Darren yanked her down the hall. The power in the facility surged violently, lights bursting in showers of sparks, wheelchairs rattling by themselves. They sprinted to the car as thunder roared overhead. Once inside, Darren floored it. We need to figure out who's after you, he muttered. If someone dies out of order, it resets, right? So maybe. No, Lila said sharply. I won't let anyone else die for me. But if we do nothing, you're dead too. As they drove through town, something caught Lila's eye. A warped, cracked glass facade. An abandoned carnival attraction, the Mirror Maze. It hadn't been open in years, yet now a faint red neon glow pulsed inside. She shouted, "Stop the car." What? Why? Lila's voice shook. That's where it ends. The moment she stepped into the Mirror Maze, she felt it, a pressure behind her eyes, a static hum in the air. The building breathed like a lung. The mirrors were tall, ancient, warped with age. The moment they entered, the reflections multiplied infinitely. But the reflections weren't quite right. In one mirror, Darren walked normally. In another, he didn't move at all. In one, Lila's eyes were bleeding. She spun around. This is a trap. Then why are we here? He asked, panicked. Because it's showing me. This is how I die. Suddenly, one of the mirrors cracked, on its own. Then another. Glass fractured and spiderwebbed outward, as if something massive was pressing against them from the other side. A deep groan echoed through the maze. Darren grabbed her hand. Run! But the maze changed. Every corridor bent impossibly. Reflections shifted and distorted until it was impossible to tell where the real exit was. Panic rose like bile. Then, they saw it. A reflection of Lila, standing perfectly still in a corridor of blood-slick glass. But she wasn't blinking. Her smile stretched far too wide. And behind her, something tall and faceless loomed, its fingers curled like hooks, dragging along the mirrored walls. She turned, and nothing was there. Darren's voice shook. It's not just reflections. It's showing what's coming. Crash. A mirror exploded, shards slicing through the air. One caught Darren in the leg, sending him to the floor. "G.O.," he yelled, clutching his bleeding thigh. "No." Lila dragged him to his feet, ignoring the blood pooling under him. But every mirror now reflected something different, Lila being crushed, impaled, drowned, set ablaze. Death was toying with her, showing her all the possible ways she might die. Each mirror a menu of fate. Then, ahead. A narrow exit. They sprinted for it, mirrors cracking as they passed. Just feet from safety, a loose wire above them sparked. A beam, long rusted, snapped from the ceiling and swung down like a guillotine. Lila shoved Darren forward. Crash. The beam hit her shoulder, spinning her into the broken mirror beside her. She fell hard, her leg skewered by glass. She screamed. Darren turned, but Lila was crawling, blood trailing behind her. The wires above her sizzled and began to droop, drawn to her like serpents. She looked up and saw herself in a mirror, her real reflection this time. Broken. Bleeding. Still alive. No more signs, she growled. No more deaths. With a cry, she ripped the shard from her leg and jammed it into the hanging wires, diverting the current into the floor. Sparks flew, lighting up the maze. Silence. For now. Darren rushed to her, helping her limp out as the building behind them flickered and went completely dark. Outside, the rain had stopped. But in the distance, they heard a siren. And the sound of breaking glass. Death was never far. The hospital stank of antiseptic and death. Lila lay in a pale blue gown, her leg stitched, her arm in a sling. Darren sat in a plastic chair beside her, his bandaged leg propped up. The silence between them was suffocating. The news was worse than they'd expected. 2 more of the bus survivors were dead, Rachel and Marcos, killed in unrelated freak accidents while they were being protected in police custody. Rachel was crushed by a falling bookshelf during questioning. Marcos had a heart attack, at 19, after drinking from a vending machine with an exposed live wire. Both deaths were ruled tragic coincidences. But they knew better. Death was cleaning up its list. They were the last 2. Maybe Clara was wrong, Darren muttered, staring out the rain-blurred window. Maybe you can't cheat it. Maybe it always gets what it wants. No, Lila whispered. There has to be a way. She stared at her own hand. A jagged scar from the mirror glass ran across her palm, like a brand. A reminder. And maybe, a map. Lila had always seen things. Flickers in the corner of her vision. Patterns. Premonitions. She remembered the bus crash before it happened, but not just as a feeling. As a vision. Maybe Clara wasn't the only one with a connection. Maybe the key wasn't to stop death, but to understand it. She closed her eyes. The hospital around her seemed to melt away. A vision flooded her mind, long corridors of blood-soaked tile, bodies impaled on rebar, choking on smoke, drowning in glass. And at the center, the list. A burning scroll unraveling in midair, names scrawled in ancient, writhing ink. Her name glowed. But just beneath it. Darren's name was gone. She gasped awake. "Darren," she said, voice urgent. "You were supposed to die before me. You were next." He froze. "You should have died in the maze. That beam, it was meant for you. But I saved you." The silence hit like a heartbeat. "And now, the list skipped you." His eyes widened in horror. "So it's back to you." The lights flickered. From down the hallway, a faint squeal echoed, wheels against linoleum. A food cart rolled on its own, silver trays clattering. Lila stood. "We can't run anymore. But what do we do?" She looked down at her scarred palm. "We break the bloodline." He blinked. "What does that mean?" "I have to stop it. Not escape it. Not delay it. Stop it at the source." She stumbled to the window and pulled back the curtain. Across the street stood a condemned church, boarded and blackened from a fire years ago. She remembered it, St. Augustine's. The sight of the bus crash in her vision. The place where it all started. "I saw that church in my first vision," she said. "The crash, the fire. Everything. We were meant to die there." They limped from the hospital, ignoring the alarms. As they reached the church, thunder cracked overhead. Inside, the place reeked of ash and rot. Burned pews. Collapsed roof. And beneath the altar, a trapdoor. Old, rusted, and slightly open. They descended into the catacombs. Stone walls closed in. The deeper they went, the more the air thickened with dread. Finally, they reached a circular chamber. At its center, a pit. And surrounding it, bones. Dozens of skulls. Ancient symbols carved in blood. It wasn't just a church, it was a gate. And they were part of the ritual. Lila turned to Darren. "This is where death began tracking us. This is the source. The curse isn't just a list. It's a bloodline. Passed down through generations. We were born into it." He stared at the bones. "So how do we end it?" She pulled a mirror shard from her coat pocket. The same one from the maze. "Blood for blood," she said. "A sacrifice to close the gate." Before he could stop her, she slashed her palm and let the blood fall into the pit. The room trembled. Shadows shrieked and screamed from the walls, clawing, reaching. Then, silence. The pit closed like an eyelid. Outside, the storm ended. Weeks later, Lila sat alone on a park bench. No visions. No flickers. Darren had left, needing to forget. The deaths had stopped. But sometimes, just sometimes. She caught her reflection looking back at her just a second too late. And smiling. The end.